Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Inshallah, we'll start where we left last week. We didn't finish last week completely because there was one point which was left.
Yeah.
Which we couldn't finish. Oh, okay.
Always happens, yeah.
This one. We were discussing about the early childhood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we discussed few things. How he went into the foster care of. Can somebody tell me the name? Who was the foster mother of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Halima Sadiya. Yeah. Halima was the foster mother of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how she came, and initially nobody wanted to take Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he was an orphan child, and then because she was left with no child, she didn't manage to get any child, so she ended up taking Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then she saw how much blessing she was getting because of the Prophet, and then she was quite keen to take all of that. Then we discussed about some kind of some stories which we know of with him living with Abdul Muttalib when Amina, who's the mother of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she passed away. Then the kind of the responsibility of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken over by Abdul Muttalib, who was the grandfather. Then once he passed away, he gave the responsibility of looking after Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to, remember who took over from Abdul Muttalib on his deathbed. We discussed he gave Abu Talib, who is the uncle. Okay, so Abu Talib, who is the uncle, who is the full brother of Abdullah. We discussed that Abdul Muttalib had 5 wives, and he had number of children from those wives, 12 sons and 6 daughters. Abdullah and Abu Talib. Abu Talib's name was Abdul Uzza, the actual name. No, that was Abu Lahab. His name was Abd Manaf, no. But one of the idols, can't remember which one, because Abdul Uzza was Abu Lahab. So he and Abdullah, they were the 2 full brothers. So that's why Abu Talib took over the care of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Sorry to interrupt. Usually Abdullah or Abdul Uzza could be meaning the slave of.
Yeah.
Or could be the servant of.
Yeah.
So it could be to save so and so, they call he is the
Yeah.
servant of somebody,
Yeah.
so he become Abd.
Yeah.
Not like worshipping him,
Yeah.
but serving him.
Yeah, but they had these. They were considered those idols as like sacred beings. So that's why they associated their names with them, because according to their religion or their understanding of the religion, those were sacred people. So that's why they named their kids with them. So Abdul Uzza, and they used Abdullah, and all of those names were common at that time. Then the next story was, which is a very famous story. I mean, everybody knows it. We all learned in Islamic studies as a kid. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was a teenager, he was very young. In fact, not even a teenager, even less than that. He was 9-10 years old. One year, Abu Talib was going on one of the journeys which they used to take. Rehlat Ashita was safe. We keep on talking about them. So they used to do 2 journeys.
Yeah.
One in winter, one in summer. Those were the trade journeys. So once they used to go to Yemen, the other time they used to go to Syria. So I think in winters they used to go to Syria, and in summers they used to go to Yemen, which is the part of Byzantine Empire or the Romans. So they used to travel to do for the trade reasons. On one of those trade journeys, Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Talib, he started crying and he said to Abu Talib, whom you leaving with me with, so why don't you take me with you on the journey? So he took him, and while on their way there was a monastery, there was a monk there with the name of Buhaira who saw Prophet ﷺ. He came out. They used to go past the monastery every time they were traveling, but on that particular day he came out. He said, well, he invited them back to their monastery and gave them a meal and told them that this young boy is going to be a prophet, because I saw the clouds are sheltering him, the trees are sheltering him, and these are all the signs of a prophet. And then he's told that apparently there are some Roman soldiers who are trying to harm Prophet ﷺ, so they are looking for him to harm him, so you should take him back. And he was taken back to Mecca straight away. So that's the story. Nice story, and there's no problem with that. The problem comes, I mean, it's not that I'm saying, I'm just mentioning, there are some scholars which found this story to be problematic. Two reasons: because it's mentioned in Tirmidhi, and the narration where it is mentioned, there is also mentioned that he was accompanied by Abu Bakr and Bilal. So Abu Bakr, there is no mention of him being the friend of Prophet ﷺ at that age. When he grew up, yes, he was a very close friend of Prophet ﷺ, but as a younger boy, there is no mention that he was a close friend. So why Abu Bakr was on that journey when he was a kid as well? So we can't explain that. And when it comes to Bilal, he wasn't even born at that time, because he's much younger than Prophet ﷺ. So that's one thing which doesn't fit with this story or authenticity of this story. The other thing is, one thing which the Orientalist and even the Mushrikeen of that time has always been difficulty explaining is that where did Prophet ﷺ got all the knowledge of history which he was talking about. He talks about the prophets of Israel and and Jesus and all of these stories which he tells through Quran. So the Orientalists of today's time, they find it difficult to explain where did he get all this knowledge from. So then they say, oh, he went to that monastery, he got some information from the monk, and then 40 years later down the line, he just bringing up in all the garbled formation. So because according to the biblical sources, it's slightly different. The Islamic sources, the stories, all these stories from Yaqub and Yusuf and all of these stories, they are slightly different. And even at the time of Prophet ﷺ, because the Jews knew that nobody else would know about these things, because they're all Bani Israel, the prophets of Bani Israel. So one of the questions they asked was about go and ask him about the Yusuf. So Yusuf's story, and then the whole story of Yusuf was revealed about Jacob, not the Yusuf, Jacob and his family, about Jacob and his family. And then that story was revealed in Quran, and he told all the Muslims and everybody. So one of the questions which Mushrikeen asked was actually the Ahl Kitab of that time, the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, they asked the Mushrikeen to ask him, because they knew the story and they thought that he won't know unless he's a prophet. Sorry.
Two questions.
Yeah.
First one is, like you say, it's a nice story.
Yeah.
and it would be nice to believe it.
Yeah.
However, is it referenced in the Hadith or the Quran in any way, shape, or form?
In Hadith, yes,
All
not
right.
in Quran.
Okay. Secondly, if the story was untrue, would it be problematic for us?
That's what I'm just discussing.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, normally Seerah is not preserved as authentically as the other
Yeah.
hadiths,
You said
because Seerah is by and large is not preserved as authentically with the chain of narration as the hadith has been. And most of the time we say, okay, no problem, it's a nice story, why do we have to be so academic about it? But there are some stories which cause problems. This is one of them, that the Orientalists take it, and even if it is true, if the story is true, I mean, he stayed about there for 4 or 5 hours, maybe. That's the maximum he must
As a
have stayed there.
9-year-old.
As a 9-year-old, for in the monastery, he must have stayed there for like 2, 3 hours, 4 hours. How much information he must have got from that? And then, as a 9-year-old, as you said, later on, 40 years later, he is bringing all this information. So it doesn't make sense what the people said, but it is being used. And in one of the famous Orientalists, he actually written a treatise, a little book, or a pamphlet on it, and he mentioned the whole thing in it. So that's why people have started thinking about it and kind of critiquing it and looking at it more academically. And there are some famous names, even not even today's scholars, old scholars, like Ibn Kathir. I mentioned his name before. He's one of the famous, not the Ibn Kathir who has written the Seerah, the Ibn Kathir, who's the historian, quite a famous name. And Ibn Sayyid an-Nas, he's one of the scholars of Spain, so Hispanian scholar. And then Imam az-Zahabi, he's one of the famous scholars as well. And they discussed it, and that's the thing which they have discussed, and especially the Imam az-Zahabi, he's written a whole little book on it. That and the reasoning what he's done is that's the reasoning which I'm giving you. That's what he's done. So it's not coming from me, actually. It's coming from him. That Bilal wasn't even born at that time. Abu Bakr, why would he be there? The third thing he said, that it's difficult to say that if Prophet ﷺ was told in front of Abu Talib by that monk that he's the Prophet, why would Abu Talib found it difficult to believe in him when he did actually later on when he got the revelation and he started preaching? Why would Abu Talib find it difficult, or for that matter, why the rest of the Quraysh found it difficult to believe in him? Why didn't he bring up, you remember that monk, that story, what he's told us, why don't you believe me? So all of these things, all of these why, Imam al-Zahabi, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Sayyid an-Nas and some other scholars have also said that it looks like that this is not a true story. Allahu Alam.
Excuse me. You said it's just a question related to that. You said that Abu Talib didn't believe, but then you said last time that he believed it in his heart, and it says that he didn't believe. So will he go to hell?
I mean, first thing I would say, we shouldn't be too worried about who's going to hell and who's going to heaven. That's the Islamic way.
No, but it said that he did believe.
I'm coming to that. We shouldn't worry about other people going to hell and heaven. That's what Prophet has told us. We shouldn't be worried. We should worry about ourselves and how we can get better. Saying that, the answer to your question is that he didn't believe. He never said La ilaha illallah, so he never believed. And he is the one who will be least punished in the fire of hell. And that's, we know from Prophet ﷺ, he told that he is will be given the shoes of hellfire, and with the heat of those shoes his brain will boil. But it's still quite a severe punishment, but that is the least of the punishment which will be given because of what he did for Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did a lot for Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was like a proper father figure, and he protected Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam throughout his life. Does that answer your question?
So just picking up on that point, so if he was the witness in this story,
Yeah. Why?
then it's hard for it to
For
make
him.
sense, because if he still didn't believe after 40 years,
Yeah.
or why didn't he go back at that time and get the rest of the Quraysh in belief
Yeah.
of this story and prepared them?
Yeah.
Neither happened. So are you saying it's better to discount this story because of all these shortcomings in the story?
According to these scholars, yes. They think that it's not a true story and we should not say it. But this is a very famous story. We learn it from, I mean, before when I was started preparing for this Seerah, and I was listening to the lectures, some of the lectures, and doing my research, I actually believe that it to be true, because never thought academically. And I still don't know with 100% surety that if it's true or not. But after listening to and reading about it, in my personal opinion, I don't think it is very authentic.
Probably their reaction to it, probably it's a true story, and their reaction to it's like their reaction to Nawfal, Waraqa bin Nawfal. But Waraqa bin Nawfal was Christian, and he said that you are the prophet, and people will force you out of your town, and if I'm alive then I will protect you. And they still didn't believe. So they had many says. And when the Prophet ﷺ was a toddler, he used to come and sit in the place of his grandfather. And he used to say, leave him because he will be very important. His position is going to be very important. So it was narrated from many sources. But people who don't want to believe, they are not going to believe.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm saying it is true or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But there are things which doesn't fit in during that story. But
Could it be that the hadith that you're referencing is
yeah, the chain. There is
chain
a
in
problem.
that's
Yeah, the
problematic
problem in the chain as
rather
well.
than the actual story. So the story might be accurate in other ways, but the inaccuracies within the story added later on down the line, just to make it sound more authentic, like the addition of Abu Bakr and Bilal.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
to-
who knows?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's difficult to say.
difficult.
But the hadith, the actual chain of narration has problems in it. So it's a da'if hadith, so it's a weak hadith. So there's a problem with the chain of narration. And the story itself, the actual content of the story, as the Abu Bakr and the Bilal, especially the Bilal, because he won't be even born,
Yeah.
let alone being the slave of the caravan, because Abu Bakr took over Bilal way after when he was a Muslim, so when he was young. Yeah, so then, yeah, yeah.
Also, later in the story, in the Seerah, we will be told that Al-Abbas said to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he heard Abu Talib saying the words you want him to say, which is La ilaha illallah
Yeah.
Muhammad Rasulullah. So it's conflicting reports, but because it's not authentic hadith like
Yeah.
what Bukhari say or Muslim, we just take it
Yeah.
face value.
Yeah. So I mean, it's as I said, it means Allah Alam, but there is some discussion. So academically speaking, so people have critiqued it academically and said that it's probably not true. But that's a last story as an early child. Then the next thing which we know of is Prophet Sallallahu in his early manhood, or when he was like a teenager. So the first thing we know of is that he worked as a shepherd. And one of the hadiths, Prophet ﷺ said, Allah never sent a prophet except that he was a shepherd. And the Sahaba asked, not even you, O Messenger of Allah? And Prophet ﷺ replied, yes, I was. And I used to tend to the flocks of people of Makkah in return of some kararith. Kararith is like the least of the money.
Yeah.
So like the pennies. So in our day and age, so you can consider them as pennies. And in another narration, he said, Prophet ﷺ saw some of the shepherds, they were taking care of the sheep, and they said, I advise you to find the tree of Arak, so there's a special tree, and find the darker branches, as this will be better for your sheep, this will be better for your flock. And then they were all shocked, and they're like, how do you know this? How do you know about the arak, and especially which type of the leaves we should find? And he said, I used to be a shepherd, and every prophet of Allah used to be a shepherd. And we know Musa alayhi salam, he was a shepherd when he was sent to become a prophet. And Daud, Prophet Daud, he was a shepherd, and he was I think he was a carpenter as well, and he was a shepherd. And what's the famous story about him?
Sorry, Zakaria was Najjar, Dawood was Haddad.
He was a blacksmith, I think blacksmith.
metal,
Yeah, ironsmith. So he was a blacksmith, and he was a shepherd as well. And he, do you know what did he do?
Which prophet?
Daud. He killed Jalut, David and Goliath. Everybody has read about that story, David and Goliath. So Goliath is Jalut. So he killed Jalut and became the king. And do you know how did he kill it? He invented something.
It was like an arrow or something. He struck
It's not there.
Catapult.
Close, not catapult, the slingshot, yeah. So he was the one who invented the slingshot, with which he could throw stone with quite force, and that's how he killed Jalut. And in another narration, it said that Musa and Daud were sent, as we discussed, and they were shepherd, and I was sent when I was a shepherd in the valley of Ajad. Ajad is just behind the Haram. If anybody, have you been to Haram? Have you been to Kaaba?
Yeah.
So the Haram nowadays, just behind the Haram, there is a big hospital. It's still called Hospital, Ajad Hospital. Where if you get sick and you have to go to hospital, they will take you to Ajad Hospital. That's the closest hospital. That's where the valley was. So that's the Ajad Valley, and he said that he used to take sheep to Ajad Valley and look after them. The next thing so some wisdoms. What do you think, if we don't go to that, why Allah made him a shepherd?
So you can tend to the sheep as you would to people.
Yeah, so
Your flock.
they will make you brave and will make you very kind-hearted at the same time, because you will be brave against any predators, and you will be kind-hearted towards your flock. Anything else?
It's also harder to manage animals compared to humans.
Depends. Depends who are you managing. Yes, it could be harder with human beings, but it gives you some leadership qualities. Yeah, so managerial qualities.
Problem solved.
Yeah, problem solving. So yes, because believe it or not, sheep and all sheep have different personalities. For us, they all look white and fluffy, and they all look the same. But if you go and ask the shepherd, they give them their sheep's and their animals' names. So they will have their names. So this is whatever the names are, and they know that this is more like a leader, and this is more like who will go wherever the rest of the flock will. There's a follower, so they will know their personality. So every animal has a different personality, and they have to deal with those animals according to their personalities. And this is the quality of a leader. So a leader needs to know how to find the qualities, different qualities in his follower, in his ummah, and he was a prophet. So we see that during his seerah, during his lifetime, that he does that all the time. So there are two people coming with the same problem, he will tell completely two different answers to them, according to their personality, according to their need. So that's what he used to do. So, being a shepherd gives you, first of all, opportunity to engage in solitude and think. So you are all alone in jungle or wherever you've taken the sheep, in the desert in his case, and that will give you time to think. Um, so that's why what he was doing. Sheep are again similar to men, as we discussed. You can need take care, or else they will go astray. And as a prophet, he need to do that. Being a shepherd makes you soft and tender, and makes you courageous at the same time. It shows that the prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam understand he needs to earn the money. He can't be he can't be a freeloader on his uncle. So he needs to, from a very young age, he learned that he need to carry his weight, as we say. So he need to earn money, and he need to help his uncle. And later on, we know that Abu Talib was a very poor man, and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually took one of his sons, Ali. That's why he used to live with him, so that to help him when he later on grew up. And Ali actually basically grew up in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's household. So because he kind of adopted him from Abu Talib. And it's also show that the simple lifestyle he had, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the purest. And one of the hadiths he said, the purest of the money you can earn is that what you earn with your hands, like with the manual work. So,
Wasn't when before he married Khadija, when she started having feelings, didn't she hire him as like a kind of business partner?
yeah, he hired
So didn't he
she.
make
Yeah,
some kind of money then?
yeah, that after that. So after that. So
it
this will
became-
be when he will be a little bit more older.
So it became some like not very wealthy but quite wealthy, as in he made decent.
No, that is just one-off business transaction which he had. He went to took Khadija's caravan just once. Wasn't like a regular thing.
Okay.
We will discuss that possibly next week or the week after, inshallah. We'll come to that story. Even Prophet Dawud sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was an ironsmith and a carpenter. Then the next thing which we know of from his that early manhood or the teenager kind of age, the Fijar Wars. Fijar Wars, basically Fijar translate in simple English would be the evil wars. So the story of is that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was about 15 when it happened. Fijar War a small series of battles which broke out between two large tribes of Arabia. So you have to remember, which we discussed when in the initial lessons when we were going through the genealogy of Arabs. So there are big tribes which are composed of lots of little sub-tribes, and then the sub-tribes are composed of little sub-tribes. So Kinana and Qais Ailan, they are two big tribes, and Quraysh is part of Kinana. Okay, so you remember that. Quraysh is part of Kinana. Kinana is a big tribe which has lots of different sub-tribes, and Quraysh is one of them. So one of the people of Kinana, not from Quraysh itself, but one of the people of Kinana, killed a person from Qais Ailan. Okay, so they are the ones who started the problem. So Quraysh side has started the dispute. Then when the war broke, they all came back in Haram, in Makkah. And even before the Islam, Haram, Kaaba was considered as Haram, and we discussed that Haram, when you are in Haram, you are protected. Nobody would come and kill you. Even that was the custom before Islam. But because Qais Ailan was so angry, in that anger they came and killed a person from Kinana in the Haram. So they broke the sanctity of the Haram. And the all-out war broke between the two tribes. And they were fighting, and because Quraysh was part of Kinana, so they were fighting as well. And Prophet ﷺ's job was that his uncles, he was too young, he was not physically participating in the war, but he used to go and collect the arrows, because arrows is a weapon which you can reuse, is an ammunition which you can reuse. So they will use the arrows, and some of arrows obviously will miss the target and they will be lying around. So in the evenings he will go collect all those arrows, bring them back and give it to his uncles, and they will use use the arrows again. So that was his job. And Prophet ﷺ, when he was much older after Islam, he said, I remember participating in the Fijar war, and I would collect arrows for my uncles and hand them back. And then he said, I do not regret participating in the war. So from that, a lot of scholars have derived a lot of lot of benefits from it. Are we allowed to participate in wars as a Muslim when between two, say for example, just to give you an example, there are two countries who are fighting. They're both non-Muslims. None of them are Muslims, so they're both non-Muslims. As a Muslim, are we allowed to take part in that war and side with one side? And according to some scholars say from this that yes, because Prophet ﷺ, even after he became a Muslim and he became a prophet, he said, I do not regret participating, because both sides are pagans, have to remember. So Kinana is pagan, Qais Elan is pagan, and they are fighting. So none of that, it's not a religious war, it's not, but the both sides, that's why it's called Fijar wars, that it's evil wars. Both sides have done something wrong. Kinana has started the war because they have killed a person, so they have done something wrong. It's not that anybody is innocent, but because the Qais Elan has broken the sanctity of the haram, so they have done something which is worse than just killing. So that's why Prophet ﷺ said that I don't regret participating in Fijar war, because he was on a side which has done less wrong. Let's put it that way. So from that, there is some fiqh has been derived, and scholar says that if there are two sides which are fighting, and one of them is wrong or less wrong, the one of them, then you can join them. How much you can participate? Can you just fund them and participate morally or financially, or can you go and physically fight? There's a lot of dispute about it. So there's differences of opinion, but that's the benefit.
Just later in the Seerah, there will be Ja'far ibn Abi Talib with the Muslims in Abyssinia.
Yeah.
When they migrated, they went to fight with
Najashi, yeah, Najashi side.
And that also the scholar takes.
Yeah, that's as well. Yeah. So the next thing from that era is Hilful Fudul. So the story is, or it's also called Hilful Mutayyibin, and we will come to that, why they are called Hilful Fudul or Hilful Mutayyibin. So Prophet ﷺ was probably in his early 20s, and it is actually a pact which was done in Dhul Qaeda, for one of the sacred months, and it took place in Mecca. So there's a person, he's from the tribe of Zubayt from Yemen. He came to Hajj and he brought some merchandise with him. That's how they used to come. So they're coming for Hajj, they will bring their stuff, they will sell in Mecca, and then they perform the Hajj at the same time as well, and then they will go back. So he came to Hajj, he had some merchandise, and Al-As ibn Wa'il, he's one of the noblemen of Quraysh. He's one of the elite, he's a politician. So he bought the merchandise from him, and after the Hajj he came back and he went to ask him for money, and he came and he said, oh, I don't have your money. Oh, come tomorrow, and he keeps on kind of delaying tactics, that come tomorrow. After a few days he understood that I'm not going to get my money back. So at that time what people used to do, they will write a poem and will say it, and that's like their social media of that time. Okay, so that's the WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever. So you write a poem, you go and you say it, and it will just spread. So that's the poem which he wrote. Ya ahla fairu la mazlumi bida'atuhu bi batni makkah naid daru wa nafar wa muhrimin ash'ath lam yaqdu umratahu lar rijalu wa bayna al hajri wal hijr hijri wal hajar inna al harama liman ma'tatu karamatuhu ولا حرام لثوب فارج الغدر. So that's the poem which he wrote, which the translation is, O family of Fihr, I am one of who has been unjustly treated because of my merchandise. I am in the valley of Makkah, not Makkata, so it's Makkah, far away from my home and away from people to protect me. I am still in my ihram. My hair is not combed, nor have I finished my umrah. Where are my men to help me? Because he's far away. Between the Hijr, and you know what Hijr is. Hijr Aswad. So we talked about that the Kaaba itself is square, but the actual Kaaba used to be rectangular, and there is still that boundary which they have placed, which tells that the Kaaba was that long, and that is still considered the side of the Kaaba. So if you manage to pray in that area, basically you have prayed inside the Kaaba.
It's called Hatim.
Hatim, yes, that semicircular thing. So yeah.
Hujr Ismail.
So
Hujr Ismail.
or Hijr Ismail, yeah.
What he said, Hujr in
Yeah, Hijr is that one. So
That's
where the Hijr Ismail or Hijr Ibrahim.
Ismail.
Is it Ismail or Ibrahim? He says between the Hijr and the Hajar. Hajar is the Hajar Aswad. So between that, basically I'm still in Makkah, but he's putting it in more poetic way. So between the Hijr and the Hajar, you are doing this to me. The true haram belong to those who are noble. There is no certitude to the one who wears a thobe while he's a traitor, and that's the Alas ibn Wa'il, he's talking about him. So, and then Quraysh said, well, we have to do something about it because it's quite shameful. It's such a shame this poem is going on, and we have to do something. And Prophet ﷺ said, I witnessed in the house of Abdullah ibn Jud'an, so he's one of the older people who was quite a righteous man. He was a very good man. A treaty that what I asked to uphold it even in Islam, I would do so. And I would not be willing to give my place for a lot of red camels. So that's the hadith which he said. So what happened, they all combined in the house of Ibn Judan, and they said, we have to take side of someone who's been oppressed, even if he's not from Quraysh. And they all agreed on it. And then how they signed, there is no paper or pen or anything, so how would they sign the treaty? They will dip their hands. So they dip their hands in perfume, and all of them put the handprint on the same part of the Kaaba, on the cloth of the Kaaba. So that's how they would sign a treaty. So that's why it's called Hilful Mutayyibin, so treaty of the people who have perfumed themselves. Okay? No. That cloth is gone ages ago. Kaaba is still there, but the handprint and the cloth is gone. So, so that's why it's called Hilful. Why it's called Hilful Fudul? Because when this news came to Alas ibn Wa'il, and he said, why are they? It's nothing to do with them. It's none of their business. I mean, why are they involved in something which is fuduli? Fuduli in Arabic means none of your business, basically. And anyone who knows Urdu, fudul is the word which we use in Urdu as well. So fudul. So it's the same word. So it means none of your business, basically. Is that correct?
There is another say that 4 of them were called Fadl. Yeah, Humul Fudul.
Could be.
The 4 of them.
Yeah.
Fadl ibn Iyad.
Yeah, could be. So that's why it's called Hilful Fudul, or Hilful Mutayyibin. Let's keep it Hilful Mutayyibin. That's a nicer name. So Fijar Wars and Hilful Fudul. So let's see what's the lessons we can learn. So the same thing which we have discussed. The Prophet ﷺ did not regret participating in the Fijar Wars, and we discussed what the benefit from that we can derive. The incidence of Hilful Fudul shows that the Prophet ﷺ was actively involved, so that's quite an important one, with the society of his time, even before Islam. So if you are Muslim, it doesn't mean that you can't really go and be an active part of the society. He was an active part of the society all the time. So that's one of the problems with the Muslims of today, especially for people who are living in the West, because we tend to not do that. We have cut ourselves.
Congregate.
Yeah, and we have cut ourselves from the rest of the society. We need to be more active in the society. We need to be more active part of the society, and to show. And we were discussing earlier today how that could be dangerous. I actually go to another kind of study circle, and the sheikh was telling us. Actually, brother was there as well, Ishfaq. So that's something which we need to do more. And we need to be a part of our society. And him participating in the incident shows that he was respected. And people, there's another narration. I think it was from Utbah ibn Rabi'a when he goes, I think it was him, that we had so much hope from you. We consider that you are a leader, but after like announcing your prophethood, you have become, and now the translation would be that you have become such a failure, because you have brought shame to the Quraysh, and you have divided the family and kin. The people thought that he is a leader. So it's not something. Means he was the youngest of the participants of Hilful Fudul. So he was respected and he was considered as a future leader. So they would bring him and make him a part of such an important treaty which they signed, and because he was considered as a future leader of Quraysh. Despite all the differences and the problems of Quraysh, they still had some good characteristics, and we discussed that previously when we said why Allah sent Prophet ﷺ in that time in Arabia, and they had some good qualities, and this is one of the examples. Okay, so I think that's all for today, because I tried to keep it short because we needed to discuss. It's almost 9 o'clock and we were finished here. Any questions before we finish?
So in terms of the treaty, Hilful Fudul, what was the outcome? What was the solution they came to? So he was saying it's got nothing to do with you.
They managed to go and get the money from Allah ibn Wa'il and gave it back to the guy. Yeah.
And then they set rules that anyone who come across a similar situation, all of us will be siding with the victim to support him until he gets his right back.
Right.
So it became like a what you call it, vigilante group or something. Vigilante, yeah. So they will be supporting anyone who is.
But it's a form of justice.
Yeah.
So a rich person couldn't bully somebody.
Yes,
and there's
exactly.
No courts and no police. And no system.
So that's why they made this treaty that all of the people who were involved in that treaty, that if somebody comes into a similar situation, we will all go and side with him.
Who won the Fijar Wars?
Who won? Quraysh won in the end. And one of the things which I forgot to mention, thanks for bringing up that question, I remember, that Fijar War, Abu Talib, it's mentioned that whenever Prophet ﷺ was with the uncles, they would gain grounds. So they would be winning on that day. And if he's not there, someday if he's not there on the battlefield with his uncles, for whatever reason, they will start losing on that day. So Abu Talib...
4 years to finish.
Yeah.
It was 4 years war.
4 year war. So it's a lot of little battles. It's not one war. It's one big war. It's series of battles.
One of the sheikh of Imam in Medina, I heard a lecture from him on Tuesday, I think, or Wednesday. And it's the first time I hear this, that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the one who brought wars to one day only. Badr one day, Uhud one day, and Hunayn one day. Ahzab, they camped on the other side, but there's no war. While First World War took 4 years, Second World War took 6 years or 5 years. Da'as and Ghabra took 40 years. If we Fijar 4 years. So he's the one who narrowed down the war into one day only.
Decisive battles.
Decisive battle finished.
And I mean, so the narration is that whichever day he will be on the war, they will start winning, and if he's not there, they will start losing. So Abu Talib said to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, "You are not leaving my side now. So every time I go to war, you will be with me. So I'm not leaving you now."
Picking up on that point that
Yeah.
he didn't regret his participation,
Yeah.
and also going back to the point about him working as a shepherd, he recognised his responsibility.
Yeah.
And could that lack of regret be part of that? He was fighting with his uncles, and therefore he recognised his responsibility to them as family.
Yeah,
And,
and he,
therefore, why should he have a regret?
yeah, and I mean, it's just because the reason why he said, because it's evil wars. The name says, and both sides have done evil.
Yeah.
One has killed, the other has killed. So there's none of them are on the
Side
real
of
truth.
right.
Yeah. So none of them is on the real truth. But one of them is
Better than the other.
better than the other. Let's put it lesser. He chose the lesser of an evil, and he was happy.